I discovered terror while standing shoulder to shoulder with mankind. Ethan Cole stood on the observation deck of the human starship Valiant, staring at the endless blackness of space. Around him, dozens of alien vessels floated in a loose formation, each one strange in shape and color, glowing softly in the void. It was the largest coalition humanity had ever joined, and the responsibility pressed heavily on Ethan's shoulders. He had been chosen to lead the human contingent, not because of rank alone, but because he had survived battles that had broken others. The aliens, with their strange forms and cold efficiency, did not trust humans easily. They often whispered among themselves, noting how small and fragile humans looked compared to their towering forms. Ethan could feel their eyes on him, curious and cautious. Beside him, Claire Watson, a human scientist, was checking the ship's sensors for the 100th time. She adjusted the small device strapped to her wrist, her fingers moving carefully over the controls. "They're reading our vitals again," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I can feel it in the data." "They're trying to see if we'll panic." Ethan nodded, not needing to say anything. He already knew. The aliens didn't just fight with weapons, they studied their enemies, looking for weaknesses in body and mind. Humans had survived because they adapted, but in the eyes of the alien coalition, that was exactly what made them unpredictable. Unpredictable was dangerous. The human squad moved to their positions on the front line. Luke Harris, one of the youngest pilots in Ethan's team, grinned despite the tension. "I hope they don't expect us to sit in the back while they fight," he said. Ethan shook his head. Humans were often underestimated, but they were not weak. "We're here to hold the line," Ethan replied. "Whatever comes, we don't break." The aliens around them shifted slightly, watching. Some of them were tall and thin, their skin shimmering with a metallic sheen. Others were short and round, with eyes that seemed to rotate independently, observing every movement. It was unsettling, but Ethan refused to show it. If humans were afraid, they would be prey. The first reports came quietly at first. Distant fleets were moving in strange patterns, faster than any standard navigation protocols could predict. Claire and her team worked feverishly, analyzing the signals. "This isn't normal," she whispered. "It's like the enemy knows where we will be before we even move." Ethan listened to her words, his jaw tight. He had heard rumors of a new species, one that was rumored to feed on fear itself, but he had not believed it. Now he wasn't so sure. The tension in the observation room was growing. Each human and alien in the room felt it, though only the humans acknowledged it openly. The aliens watched, almost amused. As night fell over the human starship, though night was meaningless in the void, the first attack came. It was not a fleet that appeared, but a shadow moving through space, a wave of pure dread that hit the coalition ships like a hammer. Alien commanders screamed in their own strange voices, and some ships veered off course, unable to withstand the sudden panic that washed over them. Humans, however, did not falter. Ethan gripped the rail, feeling the fear, acknowledging it, and moving past it. Luke shouted over the comms, "We're holding, sir. The others are breaking." Ethan felt a strange pride. Humans could feel terror, but they could also fight through it. Rachel Stone, a medic, rushed past, helping those who faltered. Her hands were steady, her voice calm, soothing the injured. "Keep moving. Focus on the mission, not the fear," she shouted. Her words carried not just comfort, but command. Humans responded, steadying themselves. Ethan looked around at his team, noting the courage in ordinary faces. Nate Brooks, a young engineer, was running to secure a damaged console, despite smoke and sparks flying around him. He didn't panic. He simply did what needed to be done. It was small acts like these that defined humanity, Ethan thought. It was not fearlessness. It was resilience. The enemy revealed itself in pieces, strange forms that seemed to flicker in and out of reality. They didn't attack with weapons first, they attacked with the mind. The psychic waves made even the strongest aliens tremble. Ethan felt it, a cold pressure against his thoughts. Claire's voice cut through the noise, calm but urgent. "Focus on breathing. Do not let them into your head." Ethan obeyed, and he noticed something remarkable. Unlike the aliens, humans were not easily overwhelmed. They had survived famine, war, and disaster for centuries. They knew fear, but they also knew how to move forward despite it. Amid the chaos, Ethan's mind wandered briefly to Earth, to the small blue planet far behind them. He thought of children playing, of families laughing, of simple human joys. Those memories were a shield. Each human soldier held their memories close, using them as armor. The alien commanders watched in confusion. Why did humans not collapse under psychic pressure? Why did they move forward when others ran? Ethan didn't have time to answer them. He had to lead. The battle escalated. Human ships formed tight formations, moving in perfect coordination with alien fleets, but they did more than support. They inspired. Wherever humans held the line, alien soldiers regained confidence. Even the most fragile-seeming humans, like the young pilot Amy Turner, who barely passed her training simulations, performed flawlessly under pressure. She maneuvered her fighter through waves of psychic distortion, striking back with precise, calculated moves. Her actions caused alien pilots to whisper among themselves, noting that humans seemed untouchable even when fear surrounded them. Claire discovered something vital during the attack. The psychic waves did not affect humans the same way. They could feel fear, but their neural patterns disrupted the enemy's resonance. Ethan listened in disbelief as she explained. It's like the enemy feeds on panic. Humans don't panic in the same way. We acknowledge fear, but we act anyway. Ethan realized then why the aliens had kept humans on the front line, not out of respect, but out of fear. Humans were unpredictable, unbroken, and relentless. The hours stretched into what felt like days. The void around them pulsed with the presence of the terror species, and yet humans kept moving, kept holding, kept surviving. Ethan walked among his soldiers, giving words of encouragement. Don't think about what we can't control. Think about what you can do right now. That's what matters. Simple words, but effective. Humans thrived on simplicity in the face of complex threats. It was a strategy the aliens could not understand. By the time the first wave subsided, the coalition ships had suffered heavy losses, but humans remained largely intact. Ethan gathered his team for a brief meeting. They were exhausted, faces streaked with sweat and grime, but their eyes burned with determination. We survived the first wave, he said quietly. And that is all that matters. We move forward together. Luke grinned, trying to lighten the mood. I guess humans aren't so easy to scare after all. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. As the coalition regrouped, a new realization dawned on Ethan. The terror they had faced was not just a physical enemy, it was psychological, a being that thrived on panic. Yet humans had not just survived, they had changed the battle. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Standing shoulder to shoulder with his team, Ethan felt a strange pride and a growing sense of awe. Humanity was fragile, yes, but in the right moments, it could stand unbroken against the most horrifying threats. That night, as Ethan gazed out at the stars, he understood the truth. The galaxy would soon learn what humans had always known. Terror was inevitable. Panic was natural, but survival, courage, and resilience, those were human strengths. In the darkest moments, humans did not run. They endured, and sometimes enduring was enough to turn fear itself into an advantage. Claire walked up beside him, her voice soft. You know, Ethan, they don't understand us yet, and maybe they never will. Ethan nodded, his eyes still on the endless void. Maybe not. But they will learn, the hard way. Behind them, the fleet prepared for the next wave. The human soldiers checked their weapons, their shields, and their resolve. They were small in number, small in size, but they were unbroken. And that unbroken spirit would stand as the first line of defense against a terror the galaxy had never seen. The night stretched on, the stars blinking cold and distant, and Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The terror species would not stop. It would test every human, every ally, every formation. But humans had a gift the aliens could not take away, the ability to feel fear, acknowledge it, and move forward anyway. It was a lesson that would cost the galaxy dearly, though few would recognize it yet. Ethan turned back to his team, to Luke, Amy, Claire, Rachel, and Nate, and felt a quiet certainty. They would survive. Together, shoulder to shoulder with mankind, they would face whatever came. And for the first time, the word terror had a new meaning. It was not just fear. It was the measure of humanity's strength. The day after the first attack, Ethan Cole and his team moved cautiously through the coalition fleet. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of engines and the occasional chatter of alien commanders. Humans had survived the initial wave, but they knew the terror species would return. It was only a matter of time. Ethan could feel the tension among his crew. Luke Harris adjusted his flight controls nervously, while Amy Turner wiped sweat from her brow. Even though they had survived, fear still lingered like a shadow. Claire Watson studied the sensors, her face pale but focused. "They're not gone," she said quietly. "They're observing, they're learning." Ethan nodded. He had suspected as much. The terror species did not attack like ordinary enemies. They watched, waited, and adapted. They thrived on fear, and humans had shown them that humans felt fear but did not collapse. That alone had confused the enemy. Now Ethan knew the terror species would try something more direct, more dangerous. As the hours passed, reports came in from various parts of the Coalition fleet. Alien ships that had broken formation during the first wave were slowly regrouping. Some were damaged beyond repair, others had crews too shaken to fight effectively. Humans, however, remained steady. Rachel Stone, the medic, moved through the corridors, checking on injured personnel. She spoke calmly to both humans and aliens, her voice a steady anchor in the storm of fear. "Breathe, stay with me, we can fix this together," she said. Her words had a strange power. The aliens seemed to listen even if they did not fully understand. Ethan gathered his officers in the command room. "They want to break us," he said. "Not just physically, but mentally. We have to hold together. We have to make them realize that humans cannot be broken so easily." Nate Brooks, the young engineer, nodded. "Our systems can handle the next attack. We just need to make sure the humans hold the line. If they do, the aliens can follow." Ethan looked around at his team. Each person was exhausted, but determination burned in their eyes. They had survived fear once, and they would survive it again. The next wave came at dawn, or at least dawn by human measurement. The void offered no true day or night. The terror species struck from multiple angles, not as ships, but as dark shapes that seemed to bend the light around them. Their presence alone caused panic in alien crews. Some shrieked, their voices high and strange, as if their minds could not process the fear that the enemy radiated. Ethan gritted his teeth. Humans felt the fear too, but they moved through it, steadying themselves with training, instinct, and willpower. Claire analyzed the psychic waves as they hit the human ships. "They're stronger this time," she said. "They can sense fear more precisely. They're targeting individuals who hesitate." Ethan realized this was a test. The terror species was probing for weaknesses, trying to find humans who might falter. He watched as Luke maneuvered his fighter through a wave that caused other aliens to freeze. The young pilot's hands were steady, his mind focused. He could feel fear, but it did not stop him. Ethan felt a surge of pride. Humans were not fearless, but they were disciplined in a way the aliens could not predict. As the battle continued, Amy Turner found herself surrounded by enemy shapes. Her mind screamed with panic, but her training kicked in. She moved with precision, firing weapons and dodging attacks. Every time she acknowledged fear and acted anyway, the enemy seemed to weaken, as if frustrated by her resistance. Ethan watched through the tactical screen, understanding the pattern. The terror species fed on panic, on hesitation, on collapse. Humans, by acting through fear, denied them their strength. In the medical bay, Rachel tended to injured alien and human alike. She noticed an alien soldier trembling uncontrollably, unable to perform simple tasks. She knelt beside him. "It's okay," she said. "Focus on your breathing, you can do this." The alien's eyes flickered in confusion. Humans were supposed to be weak, yet here was one offering calm in the middle of a psychic storm. The alien followed her instructions, trembling but functional. Rachel smiled faintly. Humans were teaching the enemy something they had never learned. Courage under pressure was stronger than any weapon. Nate Brooks worked furiously in the engineering bay. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles as he rerouted power to stabilize shields and weapons. The psychic waves hit him directly, making his head throb. For a moment, he felt like giving up. Then he remembered Ethan's words, "Humans move forward through fear." He breathed deeply, focusing on the task. The shields stabilized. Another wave of panic crashed over the fleet, and yet the humans held. Ethan moved through the corridors, checking on his people. He saw Luke and Amy side by side, covering each other against the shadow shapes. He saw Claire monitoring the sensors, calling out warnings. He saw Rachel supporting the injured. Every human he saw acted with calm determination, even when their hearts raced. Ethan realized that fear had a new definition here. It was no longer a signal to stop. It was a tool, a challenge, something to act against. The humans had turned terror into a measure of strength. The alien commanders were watching too, though from a distance. They whispered among themselves in languages Ethan could not understand. Some tall, metallic beings tilted their heads, as if puzzled. Some shorter, rounder aliens shifted nervously. They had never seen an enemy that used fear against itself, that did not collapse when confronted with the unimaginable. Ethan knew that the humans were changing the rules of the battle, even if the aliens would not admit it. Claire discovered another important fact during the assault. She called Ethan over quickly. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a display. "The psychic waves are not affecting humans the way they affect aliens. Our neural patterns create interference. It's like we disrupt the enemy's ability to feed on fear. Every time a human acts while afraid, it weakens them." Ethan stared, understanding. Humans were not just surviving, they were turning the terror species' own power against them. As the battle raged, Ethan noticed a strange pattern in human behavior. Soldiers like Nate, Rachel, Luke, and Amy were not fearless. They felt doubt, panic, and terror. Yet they continued to act. Humans acknowledged fear, but they refused to be controlled by it. This simple principle made them unpredictable and dangerous to the enemy. Ethan realized that this was why humans had survived so long on Earth, why they had endured wars, disasters, and countless hardships. Fear was not a weakness. It was a part of life, and humans had learned to move through it. The enemy shifted tactics again. This time, it sent illusions directly into human minds. Images of loved ones in danger, warnings of destruction, threats that seemed real and immediate. Some humans faltered for a moment, but then they remembered their training, their mission, and each other. Ethan shouted over the comms, "Focus on reality. What we see is not always true. Trust your instincts, trust your team." The humans responded, their actions precise and coordinated. Every human who resisted the illusion made the enemy weaker. Claire and Ethan worked side by side to monitor the fleet. "They're learning," she said. "The more humans resist, the more frustrated they become." Ethan nodded. "Good, let them learn." "Humans don't break easily." Luke called out from his fighter, reporting that shadow shapes were retreating in certain sectors. Amy added that the illusions were failing against her squad. Slowly, the humans were gaining the upper hand, not by power, but by refusing to be controlled by fear. The day wore on, and the terror species began to show signs of confusion. Alien fleets that had once been paralyzed regained confidence when human units advanced. Ethan observed that wherever humans led, aliens followed. The humans had become more than allies, they were shields, guides, and examples. They stood shoulder to shoulder with the coalition, teaching the other species a lesson they had never expected. Courage and determination could outweigh psychic power. As night fell, Ethan gathered his team. They were tired, their faces streaked with sweat and grime, but their spirits were unbroken. "We survived the second wave," he said. "We have shown them that humans act through fear. We have shown them that we cannot be controlled by it." "The next wave will come, but we are ready," Luke smiled weakly. "I guess humans are more dangerous than they look," he said. Ethan allowed himself a small laugh. Indeed, humans were underestimated by every species in the galaxy. And that underestimation was now their greatest strength. Rachel tended to the injured, while Claire monitored the sensors for signs of further attacks. Nate repaired systems and recalibrated shields. Amy and Luke prepared their fighters for the next wave. Ethan walked through the corridors, proud and reassured. Humans were small, fragile, and ordinary in appearance. But inside, they carried a resilience that no enemy, no matter how terrifying, could fully destroy. As Ethan gazed at the stars, he realized that the terror species had learned something crucial and terrifying for themselves. Humans felt fear, but they did not allow it to control them. They moved forward, shoulder to shoulder, supporting each other, adapting, surviving. This was a power no psychic wave could destroy, a strength no weapon could match. The aliens may have thought humans weak, but humans had already become the measure of resistance. In the quiet moments between waves, Ethan reflected on what this meant for the coalition and for the galaxy. Humans were often underestimated. They were seen as fragile, emotional, and weak. Yet here they were, standing against an enemy that fed on terror itself. The enemy could not understand them, could not predict them, and could not control them. Ethan realized that humanity's greatest power was simple: the courage to act even when terrified, the determination to continue even when everything seemed hopeless. And so the humans held the line, teaching the alien fleets, teaching the terror species, teaching themselves. They acknowledged fear, faced it, and moved forward. Ethan knew this was only the beginning, but he also knew that humanity had already changed the course of the battle. The terror species would return, and the fight would grow more intense. Yet humans, shoulder to shoulder with their allies, were ready. They had discovered their own strength, and nothing, not even terror itself, could take that away. The void around the coalition fleet shimmered with an eerie light as Ethan Cole surveyed the battlefield. The terror species had returned, stronger and more cunning than before. Its shadows moved with purpose, striking at every weak point it could sense. Alien commanders shouted frantic orders as panic rippled through their crews, but the humans remained steady. Ethan moved among his team, observing their actions, measuring their resolve. Humans were not fearless, but they were disciplined, and in that discipline lay power. Luke Harris piloted his fighter through the chaos with precision. He could feel the psychic waves pressing against his mind, images of destruction and death flashing in his thoughts. For a moment, fear surged in him, and his hands tightened on the controls. Then he remembered Ethan's words, "Humans act through fear." He breathed deeply, focused on his training, and guided his fighter with skill born of repetition and instinct. The enemy faltered as he moved past the illusions. Ethan watched the screen and felt a surge of pride. Humans were more than soldiers, they were anchors in the storm. Amy Turner followed close behind, her squad moving in perfect formation. The terror species attempted to isolate them, sending shadows that whispered doubt and despair into their minds. Amy's heart raced, but she refused to stop. She called out instructions to her team, and together they pressed forward, denying the enemy its power. The shadows recoiled at every human action taken despite fear. Ethan realized that the humans had become a shield, not just for themselves, but for the entire coalition. Wherever humans advanced, alien units regained courage and coordination. Rachel Stone moved through the corridors of the Valiant, helping both humans and aliens who had faltered. She held the hands of an alien soldier, whispering calm words as the psychic waves tried to break him. He trembled, but he followed her instructions, taking one small step at a time. Rachel smiled faintly. Humans were teaching the enemy something it had never learned. Courage under pressure was stronger than terror itself. She moved to the next injured, repeating the same steadying process. The psychic waves pressed, but humans and their allies continued to function, their combined determination forming an invisible barrier. Claire Watson monitored the sensors and analyzed data from the battlefield. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a display. "The more humans act while afraid, the weaker the enemy becomes. Their psychic resonance is destabilizing." Ethan nodded. He had suspected as much, but seeing the proof was remarkable. Humans were not only resisting the terror species, they were turning its power against it. Every human who acted despite fear disrupted the enemy, and every disrupted wave gave the coalition a chance to regain ground. Nate Brooks worked in the engineering bay, rerouting power to reinforce shields and weapon systems. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and smoke filled the air, but Nate did not panic. The psychic waves pressed against him, attempting to create doubt to make him hesitate. He gritted his teeth and focused on the task. Each successful repair strengthened the fleet's defenses and inspired the human soldiers to continue. Ethan knew that humans were becoming more than fighters. They were the backbone of the coalition, the living shields against an enemy that fed on fear. The terror species shifted tactics again. It sent illusions directly into the minds of human pilots, showing images of friends and family in danger, threats that seemed real and immediate. Luke hesitated for a fraction of a second, but then he forced his focus back to reality. Amy followed his lead, instructing her squad to ignore the visions and act. Every human who resisted weakened the illusions, and the enemy's confidence faltered. Ethan watched in awe. Humans did not need to be fearless, they only needed to act. Action was enough to undermine the terror species, enough to save entire fleets. Ethan moved to the command deck, giving orders and encouragement. "Hold the line, cover your team. Act even when afraid," he shouted. His words carried not just authority, but the example of human resilience. Humans across the fleet repeated his instructions in their own way, supporting each other, holding formations, repairing systems, and providing medical aid. The coalition began to stabilize. Alien ships that had been paralyzed by panic started to follow human leads, regaining control and pushing forward. Humans were no longer just participants, they were the core of the defense. Claire studied the enemy's movements. "They're confused," she said. "The more humans resist, the more erratic their attacks become. They cannot feed on fear when humans act through it." Ethan realized the significance. The terror species had assumed that fear was universal. It had not accounted for humans who could feel terror but still act. Humans had transformed from prey to predator in the mind of the enemy. The shadow shapes recoiled at every human advance, their attacks faltering. Humans were shaping the battlefield simply by refusing to break. Rachel moved to the front lines, guiding injured aliens and humans alike to safety. Her calm voice cut through the chaos, offering steady instructions. "One step at a time, you can do this," she repeated. Alien soldiers followed her words despite confusion, recovering their composure. Ethan observed the pattern forming across the fleet. Wherever humans led, others regained strength. Humans had become the living shield for the coalition, absorbing and deflecting psychic attacks while inspiring allies to stand strong. The enemy tried new tactics, splitting into smaller groups to surround human units. It hoped to isolate individuals and feed on their panic. Luke and Amy coordinated with other pilots, creating defensive formations and counterattacks. Ethan watched as humans moved with precision, communicating silently through signals and instincts. They were ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in action. The terror species had never encountered opponents who thrived while under direct psychic assault. Humans were a paradox, terrified but unstoppable. Nate continued repairing critical systems, sweat dripping from his brow. Sparks and alarms surrounded him, but he focused. He understood that every action he completed strengthened the human shield, made the fleet more resilient, and undermined the enemy. Claire reported that the psychic waves were weakening, and Ethan smiled grimly. Humans were not just surviving, they were turning fear itself into a weapon. Every human who acted despite terror created a ripple that disrupted the enemy's plans, gave allies time to regroup, and restored hope to the fleet. Ethan moved to the observation deck and looked at the fleet. Human soldiers were everywhere, repairing systems, piloting fighters, directing allies, and tending the injured. They were small, fragile in appearance, but their presence was a force. The terror species had expected humans to break, to collapse under pressure. Instead, humans stood firm, resilient, and determined. Alien commanders whispered among themselves, their expressions unreadable. They had underestimated humans, and now they relied on them. As the battle wore on, Ethan saw a pattern emerge. Humans acted through fear in every way, in combat, in repair, in medical aid, and in leadership. They were unpredictable, unbreakable, and dangerous to an enemy that relied on panic. The terror species, which had assumed it would dominate the coalition with psychic fear, was failing. Human courage was a shield, a weapon, and a lesson all at once. Ethan felt a quiet pride in humanity, knowing that their ordinary strength had become extraordinary in the face of terror. Claire analyzed the enemy's reactions. "Look at this," she said. "They're retreating in some areas. The more humans resist, the more they falter. Humans are destabilizing them." Ethan realized the truth. Humans were not invincible, but they were consistent. They acted through fear, adapted to threats, and supported each other. These qualities were impossible to anticipate or control. The terror species had underestimated humans, and that miscalculation was costing it dearly. Rachel continued her work, calming injured soldiers and guiding them to safety. Alien soldiers began to mimic her actions, copying human methods of steadying and supporting each other. Ethan watched the transformation in the fleet. Humans were teaching not only by example but through action. Their presence was a shield and their behavior was contagious. Wherever humans were present, the enemy lost strength and allies regained it. The final push of the day came without warning. The terror species concentrated its forces, striking with psychic intensity across the fleet. Human units were at the center, facing the brunt of the assault. Luke and Amy led the fighters, directing their squad through the shadows. Ethan coordinated repairs and reinforcements. Rachel tended to the injured. Nate worked tirelessly to keep systems running. Claire monitored enemy movements, providing guidance and analysis. The humans moved as one, shoulder to shoulder, through the terror. Each human action weakened the enemy. Each refusal to succumb to panic disrupted its power. Ethan realized the significance of what was happening. Humans were not just defending, they were actively shaping the battle. Their courage, resilience, and coordination were the key to the coalition's survival. They were more than allies. They were the living shield that the enemy could not penetrate. As the enemy retreated, Ethan gathered his team briefly. They were exhausted, faces streaked with sweat and grime, yet unbroken. "We held the line," he said. "We became the shield, we moved through fear, and it changed everything." Luke grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I guess humans are better than they look," he said. Ethan smiled. Indeed, humans had shown the galaxy that small, ordinary beings could stand against horrors that thrived on terror itself. Claire added quietly, "They'll come again, but next time they'll know humans are not easy to break." Ethan nodded. "And next time we will be ready. Humans have turned terror into strength. We will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with our allies and hold the line." Rachel, Nate, Luke, and Amy all nodded in agreement. They were tired, but their determination burned brighter than ever. Humans had become the living shield, and the terror species had learned that fear alone could not destroy them. The fleet stabilized, and for the first time, alien commanders looked at humans with respect, though they would not admit it aloud. Humans had shown that courage under pressure, determination in the face of terror, and teamwork in the worst circumstances could turn the tide of battle. Ethan walked among his soldiers, proud and reassured. The humans were small, fragile in appearance, but unbroken in spirit. They had become the measure of resistance, the shield for the coalition, and the living proof that fear could be faced and overcome. The void was quiet, but tension hung in the air like a heavy fog. Ethan Cole stood on the observation deck of the Valiant, watching the shadows of the terror species ripple across the fleet. It was the final confrontation. The enemy had returned stronger than ever, but humans were ready. They had survived wave after wave of psychic assaults, stood shoulder to shoulder with alien allies, and discovered a strength that even the terror species could not understand. Ethan felt a deep resolve settle within him. This battle would decide the fate of the coalition, and humans would lead it. Luke Harris prepared his fighter, checking every system meticulously. He glanced at Amy Turner, who was adjusting her targeting computer. "This is it," he said quietly. Amy nodded, her jaw tight with determination. "We're ready. We've faced worse than fear. Now we fight to end it." Ethan walked among the human units, giving calm instructions. "Stay focused. Move through fear. Cover each other. Every action matters." The humans responded with quiet nods. They were tired, they were scared, but they were resolute. Every fear they felt was transformed into purpose. Claire Watson studied the sensors, analyzing the enemy's psychic patterns. "They're consolidating," she said. "This is their main assault. Every shadow, every wave of panic is coming at us now. They want to break us once and for all." Ethan nodded. He had anticipated this. Humans had faced fear before, and they had learned how to act through it. The terror species had relied on panic to control its prey, but humans were not prey. Humans were unpredictable, disciplined, and unbroken, and now they would prove it. As the first psychic wave hit, the fleet shuddered. Alien ships faltered, some spinning out of control as terror flooded their minds. Humans felt the pressure too. Ethan felt it in his chest, a cold weight pressing against his thoughts. He closed his eyes briefly, acknowledging the fear, then opened them and moved forward. "Focus," he shouted. "Act despite fear. Move as one." Luke and Amy led the fighter squadrons, weaving through the shadows, attacking where they could, dodging where they had to. The enemy faltered each time humans resisted. Rachel Stone moved through the corridors of the Valiant, calming injured humans and aliens alike. She guided a trembling alien soldier to a secure area. "You can do this," she whispered. "One step at a time." The soldier hesitated, then followed her instructions, moving carefully but steadily. Ethan watched her work with admiration. Humans were not invincible, but they were steady, and in that steadiness lay power. Each human who acted through fear disrupted the enemy's psychic assault and reinforced the coalition's defense. Nate Brooks worked frantically in the engineering bay, rerouting power to keep shields and weapons functioning. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and alarms screamed through the corridors. The psychic waves pressed against him, trying to create doubt, hesitation, or panic. Nate clenched his jaw, forced his focus, and completed each task. Each repair strengthened the fleet. Each action inspired the human units to continue. The terror species could not feed on hesitation because humans had trained themselves to act, even when terrified. Claire's voice crackled over the comms. "They're destabilizing." Every human who acts despite fear is breaking their patterns. The shadows are weakening, Ethan smiled grimly. The terror species had relied on fear to dominate, but humans refused to submit. Humans acted, humans fought, humans moved forward. Wherever humans led, alien units regained composure, reorganized, and joined the counterattack. Humans had become the living shield and the spark that reignited hope across the fleet. Luke's fighter squadron pressed deeper into enemy territory. Shadows of the terror species swirled around them, attempting to isolate individuals. Luke felt the panic surge in his chest, a cold pressure on his mind. He gritted his teeth, remembered Ethan's words, and focused. He acted with precision, dodging attacks, targeting weak points, and protecting his squad. Amy mirrored him, guiding her team with clarity. Every human who moved through fear weakened the enemy, disrupted its psychic assault, and created openings for the coalition. Ethan coordinated the fleet, giving instructions that were calm, clear, and precise. Cover each other, support each other, act even when scared. The enemy cannot control us if we do not let it. Humans followed these instructions with quiet determination. They were small, fragile in appearance, yet unbroken in spirit. The terror species recoiled at every human advance, its psychic attacks losing power against individuals who acted despite fear. Ethan realized that humans had become more than defenders. They were weapons, shields, and leaders all at once. The enemy tried a new tactic. It projected illusions directly into human minds. Images of loved ones in danger, warnings of fleet destruction, threats that seemed real and immediate. Luke hesitated for a fraction of a second, heart racing, but he forced focus. Amy instructed her squad to ignore the illusions, act, and trust each other. Every human who resisted weakened the enemy's attacks. Ethan watched in awe. Humans did not need to be fearless, they only needed to act. Action became their weapon, their shield, and their defense. Rachel continued her work, moving from injured soldier to injured soldier. She whispered calm instructions to both humans and aliens. Breathe, move slowly, one step at a time. Alien soldiers, initially frozen in panic, began to follow her lead. Human example was contagious. Wherever humans were present, the enemy weakened and allies regained strength. Ethan realized that humans had become the backbone of the coalition, standing firm against psychic terror while inspiring all others to hold their ground. Claire analyzed enemy movements. They're retreating in certain areas, she said. Humans are destabilizing them. Every action through fear creates chaos in their ranks. Ethan nodded. Humans were not invincible, but they were consistent. They acted, adapted, and supported each other. The terror species could not predict, anticipate, or control them. Each human action disrupted the enemy, created openings, and reinforced the coalition's defenses. The tide of battle was shifting, slowly, steadily, in humanity's favor. Nate worked tirelessly to maintain the fleet systems. Alarms screamed, smoke filled the corridors, and sparks flew from damaged consoles. Psychic pressure tried to overwhelm him, but he continued his work. Each repaired system strengthened shields, restored weapons, and inspired humans to act with courage. Ethan realized that courage was not the absence of fear, it was acting through it. Humans were transforming fear into power, and the terror species could not comprehend it. The final assault began. The terror species gathered all its forces, concentrating its psychic energy into a single wave of overwhelming terror. The void trembled with the intensity of the attack. Alien ships wavered, some failing entirely as panic consumed their crews. Humans felt the weight too, cold and heavy against their minds. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, acknowledging the fear, then opened them. He would not falter. Act despite fear, he shouted. Move forward, support each other. Luke and Amy led their squads into the heart of the attack. Shadow shapes swirled around them, whispering threats, showing illusions of destruction. Luke's heart raced, but he forced control. Amy guided her squad, covering openings, shielding allies, and attacking weak points. Each human action weakened the enemy, disrupted its psychic attacks, and allowed the coalition to regain ground. Humans were no longer just participants. They were the living shield, the spark of hope, and the agents of victory. Rachel continued to support the injured, guiding them to safety. Alien soldiers began to emulate human behavior, steadying themselves under psychic assault. Ethan watched the fleet stabilize. Humans had become the center of resistance. Their courage and determination inspired allies, disrupted the enemy, and reshaped the battlefield. The terror species had assumed humans would break, but humans had turned terror into strength. Claire monitored enemy movements closely. "They're losing coherence," she said. "Every human who acts through fear destabilizes them. They cannot feed on terror anymore." Ethan realized that the humans had discovered the secret to defeating the terror species: action through fear. Fear itself became their weapon. The enemy, which had thrived on panic, could not adapt to opponents who embraced fear but refused to be controlled by it. Humans had found the weakness and exploited it perfectly. The final moments of the battle arrived. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder with their allies, facing the psychic assault head-on. Luke and Amy maneuvered through the shadows, attacking weak points. Ethan coordinated fleet movements, repairing damage and reinforcing shields. Rachel guided injured soldiers, calming them. Nate maintained critical systems. Claire analyzed and predicted enemy attacks. The humans acted as one, steady and unbroken. The terror species faltered. Its attacks weakened, its psychic waves became disorganized, and its illusions failed. Human resistance, consistency, and courage had destabilized it. Alien commanders looked at humans with respect, realizing that the species they had underestimated had become the key to victory. Ethan watched as the enemy retreated, defeated not by power alone, but by the determination of humans to act through fear. As the void grew quiet, Ethan gathered his team. They were exhausted, faces streaked with sweat and grime, yet unbroken. "We did it," he said quietly. "We acted through fear. We held the line, humans became the shield, and we survived." Luke smiled, wiping his forehead. Amy nodded. Rachel and Nate exchanged tired but proud glances. Claire allowed herself a faint smile. Humans had done what no one expected. Ethan looked out at the stars. The terror species had learned a lesson it would not forget. Humans could feel fear, but they could also act through it. Terror was not their weakness, it was their strength. They had stood shoulder to shoulder with the coalition, fought through panic, and inspired allies. Humanity had proven itself not only resilient but vital to the survival of the galaxy. The fleet began repairs, regrouped, and celebrated quietly. Alien commanders, though hesitant to admit it, looked at humans differently now. Humans were not weak, not fragile, and not expendable. They were the heart of the defense, the measure of courage, and the living proof that fear could be faced, overcome, and turned into strength. Ethan stood among his team, proud and certain. Humans had discovered terror and had mastered it. In the calm that followed, Ethan thought about what humanity had shown the galaxy. Terror was not the enemy, panic was not the end. The real power lay in resilience, courage, and unity. Humans had faced a force that fed on fear itself and emerged victorious. The alien coalition had survived because of them. And humans had discovered something greater than victory. They had discovered the depth of their own strength.